The chamber stretched wide across Station Harmony 7, a massive wheel spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated seats, each area modified to suit their particular biology. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in tanks of liquid. But all of them were here for the same reason: to maintain the peace that had lasted for thousands of years. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the human section, her hands folded neatly on the smooth table before her. She was a small woman by human standards, with gray streaks running through her black hair. Her face remained calm as the Catharan War Prince spoke, his voice booming through the translation devices that hung in the air. "The border worlds will submit to Catharan rule," War Prince Jakor announced. His species stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. Scars from ritual combat covered his chest, each one a mark of honor in his culture. "We have given them 30 rotations to decide. This is more than generous." The mediator, a being called Veselith from a species that resembled insects more than anything else, clicked her mandibles together nervously. "War Prince, the Council has protocols for territorial disputes. We must follow the proper channels." "We have followed your channels for 10 cycles, Jakor replied, his 4 hands gesturing dismissively. "The Catharan Empire grows tired of waiting. Our warriors need room to prove themselves. It is our way." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. They had dealt with the Catharans before. The species valued strength and combat above all else. But they also followed rules. Their wars were formal affairs with champions fighting in single combat, or fleet battles where ships lined up and fired until one side surrendered. It was almost civilized. Chen Wei raised her hand slowly. The gesture activated her speaker system. "Perhaps we could arrange a mediation session," she suggested, her voice soft and measured. "Humanity would be happy to host talks between the Catharan Empire and the border colonies. We've had success with similar situations before." A ripple of barely concealed amusement passed through some sections of the chamber. The Glarathi ambassador, a being made mostly of crystalline structures, actually made a sound that translated as laughter. "The humans wish to mediate," Jakor said. And though his face couldn't smile in a way humans would recognize, there was mockery in his tone. "Tell me, Ambassador Chen, how many wars has your species won? How many enemies have you conquered?" Chen Wei's expression didn't change. "We prefer not to fight if we can avoid it." "Yes, we know," Jakor said. "You have been part of this council for 200 rotations, and in all that time, you have never once shown military strength. Your defensive fleet consists of, 200 vessels? Even the Pithari have more ships, and they are herbivores who evolved from creatures that ate grass." More species made sounds of amusement. The humans had become something of a joke in certain circles. They spoke eloquently about peace and diplomacy. They offered aid and resources freely, but they seemed soft, almost afraid of conflict. Their representatives always voted for peaceful solutions, even when force was clearly necessary. Chen Wei waited for the laughter to die down. "We have found that peace serves everyone's interest better than conflict." "Peace," Jakor repeated as if tasting the word. "You speak of peace because you are weak. You have nothing to fight with, so you pretend that not fighting is a virtue. The Catharan way is honest. We are strong, so we take what we need. There is honor in this." The mediator tried to restore order. "The council will review the Catharan petition and—" "There is no petition," Jakor interrupted. "There is a statement of fact. The border worlds will become Catharan territory. If they resist, we will defeat them. If the council interferes, we will defeat the council. This is how things work in the real universe, not in your comfortable meeting rooms." He turned his massive body and walked toward the exit, his footsteps heavy on the metal floor. His delegation followed behind him, leaving the chamber in tense silence. Over the following weeks, the situation worsened. 3 border colonies inhabited by species that had been part of the council for centuries fell under Catharan control. The wars were brief. Catharan fleets arrived, demonstrated their superior firepower in ritualized displays, and the colonies surrendered rather than face destruction. It was all very proper and civilized according to galactic standards. The council held emergency sessions. They debated sanctions and strongly worded declarations. Chen Wei attended every meeting, always advocating for diplomatic solutions, for patience, for understanding. Other ambassadors began to avoid her in the corridors. She represented everything they were starting to hate about the council's weakness. The humans talk and talk. one ambassador was overheard saying in a private lounge. But when has talking ever stopped someone who only respects strength? Chen Wei heard these comments. She knew what the other species thought of humanity. They saw humans as the species that had achieved space travel, but somehow forgotten to bring their spine along with them. A species so eager to be liked that they would accept any insult, endure any mockery, just to remain part of the galactic community. She sat alone in her quarters one evening, looking out at the stars. Her assistant, a younger human named David Park, brought her the daily reports. "The Catharans are moving ships toward New Harmony," he said quietly. "Intelligence suggests it might be their next target." New Harmony was a multi-species colony world. 8 million beings lived there, including 2 million humans. It was supposed to be neutral territory, protected by Council Charter. Chen Wei closed her eyes for a moment. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them to prepare Protocol 7. David's face went pale. "Ambassador, are you certain?" "Protocol 7 hasn't been activated in 200 years, Chen Wei finished. "I know, but I think our time of being underestimated is about to end." The attack on New Harmony came on a Tuesday morning by human calendar reckoning. The Catharan fleet emerged from slipspace at the edge of the system, exactly as their military protocols required. War Prince Jakor himself led the assault from his flagship, a massive vessel called the Honored Blade. Following Catharan tradition, they broadcast their intentions clearly. All military forces had 12 standard hours to evacuate. Civilian populations had 24 hours. After that, orbital bombardment would begin on strategic targets. It was, by their standards, extremely honorable and generous. On the surface of New Harmony, alarms began to sound across every settlement. Yuki Tanaka was teaching her class of 7-year-old children when the emergency broadcast interrupted her lesson. The children looked up at her with confused faces, not understanding why the friendly voice from the speakers was telling them to go to the evacuation centers immediately. "It's okay," Yuki told them, keeping her voice steady even as her heart raced. "We're going to play a game. We're all going to walk very quickly to the shelters. Stay together and hold hands." Across the planet, millions of beings began moving toward spaceports and underground bunkers. The evacuation was orderly at first. The Council had drills for this kind of thing. But as the hours passed and transport ships began launching, panic started to set in. In orbit, the Catharan fleet maintained their position, watching and waiting. They were not monsters by their own understanding. They gave warning. They allowed evacuation. This was proper warfare. The human evacuation ships were clearly marked with medical symbols and civilian transponders. 5 large vessels, each carrying thousands of children and their caretakers, launched from the main spaceport. They transmitted all the proper codes, broadcast their civilian status on every frequency. War Prince Jakor watched them on his display screens. His tactical officer, a younger Catharan named Broktal, pointed at the ships. "Those vessels show human registry," Broktal said. "Should we allow them to pass?" Jakor considered this. The humans had been annoying him for months with their constant talk of peace and mediation. They had made him look weak in front of the Council by always suggesting alternatives to proper combat. "Human ships," he said slowly. "They claim to be carrying civilians. But how do we know they are not military vessels in disguise? The humans are tricky. They speak softly, but perhaps they hide weapons. Shall we inspect them, War Prince?" "No," Jakor said. "That would take too much time and they might escape our weapon range. Target the ships. If the humans complain, we will say it was a targeting error in the heat of preparation." 3 of the 5 evacuation ships were destroyed in the following minutes. The other 2 managed to jump to slipspace just in time, badly damaged but intact. In those 3 ships, nearly 3,000 human children died, along with their teachers and caretakers. Yuki Tanaka was on one of those ships, holding the hands of 2 crying children when the Catharan weapon struck. The news reached the Galactic Council within the hour. The reaction was predictable. Shock, outrage, calls for immediate sanctions. The Catharans claimed it was an unfortunate accident of war. These things happened. There would be compensation, of course, and a formal apology. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the emergency council session, listening to the Catharan representative explain how tragic mistakes occurred in the confusion of military operations. She sat very still, her hands flat on the table in front of her. Her face showed no emotion at all. When the Catharan finished speaking, she stood slowly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone expected another plea for peace, another diplomatic suggestion. "We tried," Chen Wei said quietly. Her voice was so soft that the translation systems had to amplify it. "For 200 years, we tried to be something different than what we were. We thought we had moved beyond our old ways. We thought we could show the galaxy that there was another path." She looked directly at the Catharan representative. "You should have let us keep pretending. You should have accepted our peace while it was offered freely." The Catharan representative made a dismissive gesture. "You threaten us? You who have no military strength? You who we have seen cowering behind words for 2 centuries? Chen Wei touched her datapad. "Humanity invokes Article 7 of the Council Charter. Total warfare authorization. We are formally declaring war on the Catharan Empire. Not your ritualized combat, not your honorable duels, real war. The kind humans have been practicing for 40,000 years. A confused murmur ran through the chamber. Article 7 was an ancient provision that no one had ever actually used. It was meant for species extinction-level threats. Most council members had forgotten it even existed. "This is not necessary," Mediator Veselith said, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "The Catharan Empire has offered compensation. We can arrange peace talks." "No," Chen Wei said simply. "We're done talking." She left the chamber, walking with measured steps. Behind her, the council erupted into chaos with ambassadors shouting questions and demands. She ignored all of it. In her private quarters, she opened a secure channel to Earth. A face appeared on the screen. A stern-looking man with more scars than flesh on the visible portions of his face. Fleet Admiral Marcus Okoye, commander of the Human Defense Forces. "Ambassador," he said, "I've been watching the council feeds. I'm sorry about the children." "How long until you can mobilize?" Chen Wei asked. "The fleets have been in position for 3 weeks," Okoye replied. "We started moving assets when the Catharans first made threats. We just kept them very, very quiet." "Show them," Chen Wei said. Her voice was still soft, but now there was something else in it. Something cold. "Show them what we've been hiding. Show them why we tried so hard to avoid this." "Understood, Ambassador. All fleets are authorized to engage. What are the rules of engagement?" Chen Wei closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were empty of the warmth that had characterized her for 200 years of diplomatic service. "There are no rules," she said. "That's what war means." Across human space, in hidden shipyards and secret bases that the Council had never known existed, something ancient and terrible began to wake. Humanity had spent 2 centuries pretending to be peaceful. Now the pretending was over. The Catharan Empire controlled 53 star systems. They had built their territory over thousands of years through conquest and ritual combat. Their military was considered the finest in the known galaxy. Their warriors trained from birth for the honor of battle. When the human fleets arrived, they came to all 53 systems at once. War Prince Jakor was in his command chamber on Catharan Prime when the first reports came in. His communications officer was making sounds of distress, all 4 of his hands moving frantically across his control surfaces. "War Prince, we have contacts. Multiple slipspace exits across all border systems." "How many ships?" Jakor asked. He was not concerned. The humans had perhaps 200 defensive vessels. Even spread across multiple systems, they would be easy to destroy. "We're still counting, War Prince. Current estimate is 5,000 vessels." Jakor's skin, which could change color with emotion, flickered to a pale gray. 5,000? That's impossible. The humans don't have 5,000 ships. 10,000 now, War Prince. They're still emerging from slipspace. By the time the counting finished, 50,000 human warships had taken position across Catharan space. They didn't line up for honorable combat. They didn't broadcast challenges. They simply appeared and began executing their missions with cold efficiency. The Galactic Council watched through long-range sensors, unable to believe what they were seeing. Mediator Veselith opened an emergency channel to Ambassador Chen Wei. "Where did these ships come from?" Veselith demanded. "Your records show only 200 defensive vessels." "You asked about our defensive fleet," Chen Wei replied calmly. "That is exactly 200 ships. They defend our home systems." "You never asked about the rest. The rest? How many ships does humanity have?" "This is approximately 3% of our total military capacity," Chen Wei said. "We didn't lie. We just didn't volunteer information you never asked for." In Catharan space, the human attack began, but it was nothing like the warfare the galaxy understood. There were no formal battle lines, no challenges issued, no honor duels between champions. Human ships moved in coordinated swarms, their AI systems allowing them to act as a single organism. They didn't target Catharan warships first. Instead, they went after communication satellites, supply depots, fuel refineries, and shipyards. Within the first 6 hours, the Catharan Empire was deaf, blind, and unable to resupply their forces. Captain Sarah Rodriguez commanded the destroyer Relentless. Her ship was part of a group targeting a Catharan logistics hub. The facility was protected by the Catharan rules of war. It was clearly marked as non-combat infrastructure. Attacking it would be dishonorable. Rodriguez didn't care about Catharan honor. Her younger sister had been a teacher on one of the evacuation ships from New Harmony. Her orders were clear and she followed them without hesitation. The logistics hub was destroyed in minutes. With it went the ability to feed and supply Catharan forces in 12 systems. On Catharan Prime, War Prince Jakor tried to organize a defense. He sent challenges on all frequencies, demanding that the human commander face him in proper combat. The messages were ignored. Human ships continued their systematic dismantling of Catharan military capability. The Catharan Home Defense Fleet was their pride, 5,000 warships crewed by their finest warriors. They formed proper battle lines and advanced to meet the human forces, expecting the humans to do the same. The humans didn't form battle lines. They swarmed. Hundreds of smaller ships working together, coordinated by quantum-linked computers that could process battlefield data faster than any organic mind. Catharan ships found themselves surrounded, cut off from support, overwhelmed by massed fire from multiple angles. Admiral Okoye watched the battle from his command ship, the Remembrance. His tactical display showed Catharan vessels being eliminated with mechanical precision. His face showed no satisfaction, no joy, only grim determination. "Admiral, we're receiving a communication from the Catharan flagship," his communications officer reported. "War Prince Jakor wishes to speak with you. Put him through." Jakor's face appeared on the screen. The proud war prince looked confused and frightened. "You fight without honor," he said. "This is not warfare. This is slaughter." "Yes," Okoye agreed simply. "That's what war is. What you practice is sport with lethal weapons. What we practice is the complete destruction of an enemy's ability and will to fight. We followed all protocols. We gave warning before attacking New Harmony. You killed 3,000 of our children," Okoye said, his voice flat. "Did they look like military targets to you? Did those 7-year-old kids threaten your warrior pride? It was an accident of war. There are no accidents in war. There are only consequences. You wanted war. Now you have it." A Catharan weapons officer on one of their cruisers managed to target a human hospital ship. The ship was clearly marked with medical symbols and was broadcasting civilian transponder codes. The Catharan fired anyway, hoping to show the humans what it felt like to lose non-combatants. The hospital ship's shields absorbed the blast easily. Then it returned fire with weapons that no medical vessel should possess. The Catharan cruiser was cut in half. Captain Rodriguez received a communication from that hospital ship. The captain was questioning whether they should have fired on what was technically a military target. The vessel was manufacturing ammunition in its lower decks while treating wounded in the upper ones. Rodriguez replied, pulling up the scan data. "They integrated military production into medical facilities. There are no non-combatants in their empire. Everything serves their war machine." She paused, thinking of her sister. "They taught us that lesson on New Harmony. The battle for Catharan Prime lasted 11 hours. When it ended, 847 Catharan warships were destroyed or disabled. Human casualties were 3 ships with damage, 0 destroyed. The humans had barely scratched their fleet strength. War Prince Jakor stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, watching human vessels take position around his homeworld. He opened a channel following proper Catharan protocols, offering formal surrender under the traditional terms. The humans ignored the surrender and continued operations. More of their ships arrived, establishing orbital superiority. Ground forces began landing on Catharan military installations. "Why don't they accept our surrender?" Jakor asked, though no one on his bridge could answer. On the Remembrance, Admiral Okoye was asked the same question by a junior officer. "Because wars don't end when one side gets tired of fighting," Okoye explained. Wars end when one side loses the ability to continue. The Catharans still have military capability, so we keep going. Across the galaxy, the Council watched in growing horror as humanity demonstrated what they called warfare, not the ritualized combat the galaxy had practiced for thousands of years. Real warfare, total warfare, the kind that left no doubt about who won and who lost. The kind that humanity had been practicing since before the Catharan Empire even existed. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the third time in a week. The chamber was filled with nervous energy. Representatives who had spent centuries in comfortable debate were now watching one of their member species wage a war that looked nothing like anything in their experience. Mediator. Vesalith called the session to order, her mandibles clicking with stress. Ambassador Chen Wei, the Council demands that humanity cease military operations immediately. The Catharan Empire has attempted to surrender multiple times. Chen Wei stood at the human platform, her posture relaxed but her eyes hard. The Catharan Empire has offered conditional surrender under their traditional terms. We don't accept conditions. We require unconditional surrender, complete disarmament, and cooperation with war crimes tribunals. War crimes? The Glarathi ambassador's crystalline structure flickered with confusion. The Catharans followed all accepted protocols of warfare. They murdered 3,000 children, Chen Wei said simply. That's a war crime by human standards. And since they declared war on humanity, they fight by our standards now. This is unreasonable, another ambassador shouted. You're destroying their entire civilization. No, Chen Wei corrected. We're destroying their military capability. There's a difference. But since the Council seems confused about what humanity is capable of, let me provide some education. She activated her datapad, the massive holographic display in the center of the chamber, lit up with images and text. This is humanity's military history, all of it. The parts we didn't share when we joined the Council 200 years ago. The display showed ancient battles, soldiers with primitive weapons fighting hand to hand, then more advanced conflicts with firearms and explosives, then images that made several Council members recoil in shock. Cities destroyed by nuclear weapons, entire populations wiped out, battlefields where nothing remained alive. We have been fighting wars for 10,000 years of recorded history, Chen Wei explained. Probably much longer than that, but our records only go back so far. We have over 40,000 words for war across our various languages. We have 200,000 words that mean variations of kill. The display shifted to show massive ground battles with millions of soldiers, naval conflicts spanning entire oceans, aerial bombardments that turned cities into rubble. This is the First World War, Chen Wei said, pointing to images of trenches and poison gas. 20 million dead. This is the Second World War. 85 million dead. This is the Eugenics Wars. 120 million dead. This is the Unification Wars. The last major human conflict before we achieved global peace. 2 billion dead over 50 years. The Council chamber was silent except for the translation of Chen Wei's words. Species that had never experienced real warfare watched the documentation of humanity's violent history with growing horror. Every human child learns this history starting at age 10, Chen Wei continued. Every human serves 2 years in military or civil defense service. Not because we love war, but because we remember what happens when we forget its cost. We remember so that we never have to do this again. She changed the display to show human military doctrine. These are just some of our tactical concepts. Total war, meaning every resource of a nation is dedicated to victory. Scorched earth, meaning we deny the enemy everything even if we have to destroy it ourselves. Mutually assured destruction, meaning we build weapons capable of killing everyone including ourselves just to make sure no one uses them. Mediator Vesalith was trembling. Why didn't you tell us this when you joined the Council? Would you have accepted us if we had? Chen Wei asked. Would you have let a species this violent join your peaceful community? We thought we had moved beyond our old ways. We thought we could learn from your example and become truly peaceful. And we tried. For 200 years we tried. She looked around at the assembled species. But peace isn't something you just decide to have. Peace requires that everyone choose it. The Catharans didn't choose peace. They chose violence. And when you choose violence against humans, you get all of our history in response. While the Council absorbed this information, human special operations teams were executing the final phase of their campaign. They had identified every member of the Catharan military command structure, every logistics officer, every strategic planner. In a single coordinated night, they captured or neutralized all of them. War Prince Jakor was taken from his flagship by human soldiers who appeared seemingly from nowhere. One moment he was on his bridge, the next he was surrounded by armored humans carrying weapons that looked disturbingly efficient. They transported him to a human ship, where he was brought before Admiral Okoye. The Admiral was sitting in a simple chair, reviewing reports on a data pad. He didn't look up when Jakor was brought in. "You fight without honor," Jakor said, his forearms bound. "You fight like cowards, attacking from hiding, striking at civilians, ignoring all rules of warfare." Okoye finally looked up. His scarred face showed no emotion. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose. We learned a long time ago that we couldn't afford that luxury. "Then you are barbarians." "Yes," Okoye agreed. "We are. We spent 10,000 years being barbarians to each other before we finally learned to stop. Do you know how we learned? We made war so terrible, so destructive, so absolutely devastating, that everyone was too horrified to continue. We didn't evolve past warfare. We exhausted it." He stood and walked to a window showing Catharan Prime below. "We came to the stars hoping to find someone to teach us a better way. And for 200 years we thought we had learned. We thought we could be the peaceful species we wanted to be." Okoye turned back to Jakor. "You took that from us. You killed our children and laughed about human weakness. Now you've learned what we really are. What will you do with us?" Jakor asked quietly. "That depends on you. 3 of your colony worlds have already surrendered unconditionally. They're being occupied by human forces now. No one is being harmed. Infrastructure is being repaired. Medical care is being provided. We're even helping with their food distribution." Jakor looked confused. "You conquer us and then help us? We're not conquering you. We're defeating you. There's a difference. Once you're defeated, you stop being an enemy and become a responsibility. We learned that lesson too the hard way." Okoye walked back to his chair. "You have a choice, War Prince. Surrender unconditionally, stand trial for war crimes and help your people transition to peace. Or refuse, and watch us dismantle what's left of your empire piece by piece until there's nothing left to fight for." Jakor was silent for a long moment. Finally, he lowered his head. "I surrender, unconditionally." The war lasted 47 days from start to finish. When it ended, the Catharan Empire no longer existed as a military power. Their fleets were destroyed or impounded. Their weapons factories were dismantled. Their warrior culture was confronted with the reality that all their honor and tradition meant nothing against an enemy that fought to win rather than to prove strength. The galaxy had learned something about humanity, but more importantly, humanity had learned something about itself. They had hoped to leave their violent past behind. Instead, they had discovered that their past was always there, waiting. The question now was what they would do with that knowledge. On day 52, the Catharan High Council made their formal declaration of unconditional surrender. War Prince Jakor, along with the surviving members of the military command, signed the documents under the watchful eyes of human guards and council observers. No one celebrated. There was nothing to celebrate. Human occupation forces moved into Catharan Prime within hours. The occupation was nothing like what the Catharans expected. They had been conquered before thousands of years ago, and remembered the stories of enemies burning cities and enslaving populations. Instead, human engineers arrived and began repairing the infrastructure damaged in the war. Medical teams set up facilities to treat wounded Catharans. Food distribution networks were established. Within 2 weeks, Catharan Prime was functioning better than it had been before the war started. Commander Lisa Torres oversaw the occupation of the capital city. She walked through streets filled with Catharans who watched the human soldiers with confusion and fear. Her soldiers were armed but relaxed, helping civilians where they could, directing traffic, even playing with Catharan children who were brave enough to approach. "Why are they helping us?" a Catharan elder asked through a translation device. "We are your enemies." "You were our enemies," Torres corrected gently. "Now you're people who need help. We know how to do both." The war crimes tribunals began in the 3rd month after the surrender. They were held in a neutral space station, observed by council representatives and broadcast across the galaxy. War Prince Jakor and 73 other Catharan military leaders were charged with the murder of civilians at New Harmony. The trials were fair, almost painfully fair. Human lawyers explained every charge in detail. Catharan defendants were provided with legal representation, evidence was presented methodically, witnesses testified. The whole process was slow, deliberate, and transparent. Some council members found this more disturbing than if the humans had simply executed the Catharans. A species capable of such devastating warfare was also capable of this level of justice? It didn't fit their understanding. War Prince Jakor stood trial for 15 days. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He had given the order to fire on the evacuation ships. The communications logs were clear. He didn't deny it. I believed they might be military vessels, he said when asked to explain his actions. In war, one must make quick decisions. The human prosecutor, a woman named Janet Okonkwo, looked at him calmly. You believed 5 ships clearly marked as civilian, carrying only children and caretakers might be military threats? Humans are clever. I thought it might be a trick. So you murdered 3,000 children because you thought it might be a trick. Jakor had no answer to that. The tribunal found him guilty on all counts. His sentence was 25 years imprisonment, with possibility of early release after 15 if he showed genuine remorse and helped with reconciliation efforts. Several council members thought the sentence too lenient. Others thought it too harsh. The humans thought it was justice. While the trials continued, Ambassador Chen Wei addressed the Galactic Council with a proposal for reform. The chamber was packed, every species present and paying attention in a way they never had before. The council was built on a lie, Chen Wei began. The lie that warfare is civilized, that it can be controlled with rules and honor. That violence can be contained if we just follow proper protocols. She gestured to the displays showing human military strength, which the council now understood was barely a fraction of what humanity could deploy. We tried to believe that lie too, but we know the truth. War is not civilized. It's not honorable. It's destruction and death and horror. The only way to prevent it is to make everyone understand what it truly means. Her proposal was comprehensive, mandatory military education for all council species, so they understood what warfare actually was. Collective security guarantees, meaning an attack on one was an attack on all. Real deterrence forces, not symbolic defense fleets, and most controversially, human oversight of council military matters. You're asking us to let you control the council's military, Mediator Veselith said, her mandibles clicking nervously. I'm asking you to let us prevent what just happened from ever happening again, Chen Wei corrected. We don't want control. We want peace. Real peace built on understanding and strength, not on ignorance and hope. The debate lasted for weeks. Some species wanted humanity expelled from the council entirely. Others wanted to give humans everything they asked for. The galaxy was divided between fear and respect, often feeling both at once. Finally, a vote was called. The proposal passed with only 3 opposing votes. Humanity would remain on the council and take a permanent seat on the new Security Council with veto power. No one voted against the security measures, not even those who had opposed the broader proposal. 5 years later, War Prince Jakor was released from prison. He had served his minimum sentence and had cooperated fully with reconciliation efforts. He had spoken at schools, explaining to young Catharans how his pride and arrogance had led to disaster. He had met with human families who lost children at New Harmony, asking for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. On the anniversary of the attack, a memorial was unveiled on New Harmony. It was a simple structure of crystal and stone, with the names of all who died carved into its surface. 3,000 names, most of them children. Ambassador Chen Wei attended the ceremony. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but she still served as humanity's representative. She stood before the memorial, reading names quietly to herself. Ambassador. She turned to find Jakor standing nearby. The former war prince looked smaller somehow, as if prison and guilt had diminished his physical presence. His stone-like skin was duller now, marked with new scars from injuries that weren't earned in honorable combat but in learning humility. War Prince, she acknowledged. Just Jakor now, he said. I have no rank anymore, no title. I am simply a Catharan who made terrible choices. They stood together in silence for a moment, looking at the names. Will you ever forgive us? Jakor asked quietly. Will humanity ever forgive what we did? Chen Wei considered the question carefully. We'll never forget. Those children deserve to be remembered. But we'll try to forgive. That's what humans do. We remember our history so we don't repeat it, and we forgive so we can move forward. It's harder than war in some ways. I don't understand humans, Jacques admitted. You can be so terrible and so kind, so violent and so merciful. How do you live with such contradiction? The same way you'll learn to, Chen Wei said. By making choices every day to be better than what we were. By remembering that peace isn't the absence of the ability to do violence, it's choosing not to use that ability. She placed her hand on the memorial, feeling the carved names under her fingers. You forced us to remember what we are. Now we all have to live with that knowledge. The question is what we do with it. Across the galaxy, human ships were returning to their hidden bases, back to the secret shipyards and silent stations that the Council now knew existed. The fleets that had destroyed the Catharan Empire were going back to sleep, waiting for the day they might be needed again. Everyone hoped that day would never come. But everyone now knew that if it did, humanity would be ready. The galaxy was at peace. But it was a different kind of peace than before. Not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of understanding. Not the peace of weakness pretending to be strength, but the peace of strength choosing restraint. It was a terrible peace, built on the knowledge of what could happen if it failed. But it was real, and it was honest, and it was the only kind of peace that had any hope of lasting. Ambassador Chen Wei looked up at the stars above New Harmony, thinking about the future. Humanity had tried to leave its violent past behind and failed. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was to carry that past forward, to remember it always, and to make sure the next generation understood why peace was worth fighting for. Even if that meant being ready to fight. Always, so that hopefully no one ever would have to.